Welcome back to Hardball. The latest Kentucky poll shows a tight Senate race between Republican Rand Paul, the Tea Partier, and Democrat Jack Conway, the Attorney General of the state. Paul leads 49 to 47, which is nothing, practically in the new Survey USA poll. It's a robo-poll, but we're joined now by the man himself, Jack Conway, Attorney General of Kentucky. General, thank you for joining us. I got a couple points. You've been hitting this guy, Rand Paul, on a couple issues I think are serious business. Is he getting money from racists? And should he send it back?
Well, good evening to you, Chris. And we called on him a few days ago to return contributions that he received from white separatists. It's just too painful an issue for him not to return the contributions. And I think if you're in public life, you ought to take a look at those who are contributing to you. And it calls to mind the fact that Rand Paul's had to dismiss some staffers because of some comments they've made online. Everyone seems to remember the 20 painful minutes he had on this very network where he rejected fundamental provisions of the Civil Rights Act. So I think it's on Rand Paul to make certain that he would return contributions from people who have associations with white separatist organizations.
Does he have a personal problem in that regard, civil rights? Personal problem?
I don't know. I'm going to have to let others judge Rand Paul. It just seems to me that...
Well, you're running against him. Let me judge it. You have to judge him. Do you think he's got a problem or not? Because you're running on this issue. Is it an issue about his personal character or what?
Well, I think it's an issue he just doesn't get Kentucky. He doesn't get our values in Kentucky. If you take money from white separatists, that's not acceptable. He seems to have a worldview that government should never touch business in any way whatsoever. And as Attorney General, I'm all about accountability. I think we need more accountability, not less of it. And so I think Rand Paul has to be accountable on this particular score. And I don't think it does us any good in the Commonwealth of Kentucky to have a candidate like Rand Paul who takes this kind of money and then also says he's against the Americans with Disabilities Act and other issues like that.
Okay, would you have a bad conscience if you took money from racists?
Yes.
Well, why doesn't he? I'm asking you to ask him. Should he have a bad conscience for taking money from racists?
Yes, he should. He should return it.
So it's a character issue. Let me ask you about this drug issue. I know he's a libertarian, and all of us have talked about this since we grew up, especially people of my generation. Should there be certain drugs that we don't consider criminal violations? We don't really use the full force of the law against people. Some people have this view about marijuana use. So what is his position, as you understand, on drug use? Apparently he has a somewhat libertarian view on that subject, which you, I think, are arguing is not a Kentucky view.
Exactly. He seems to think that all drug issues should be left to the local level, and it's up to the states to decide what they criminalize and don't criminalize. But in Kentucky, we have a peculiar problem with prescription pills being used for off-label purposes. It's an epidemic with OxyContin and hydrocodone and other drugs in eastern Kentucky. And in fact, Hal Rogers, a Republican, has brought in a lot of federal money to try to combat the issue, which I support. But Rand Paul has stood up and said that drugs aren't a pressing issue, and he doesn't want any federal support for treatment or for interdiction. It's not about being tough on drugs. I mean, as Attorney General, I think we should treat criminals like criminals, but it's about being smart on it. And this isn't an issue that Kentucky can tackle alone.
You're Attorney General. Should people be arrested for smoking marijuana in Kentucky?
I think so. Absolutely. It's against the law.
And should they be put in prison?
Well, you know, a first-time offense in a small amount, I think we can incarcerate people for more serious offenses. I mean, first-time nonviolent drug offenses, I think we have to look at treatment, we have to look at education and other options. We can't just incarcerate our way out of this problem. But as Attorney General, I will enforce the drug laws.
Let me ask you about this election. It seems like you've got a real shot in the next month. I want you to talk to voters out there. We've had a big fight. I hear it all over my network about whether the people on the, what you call the progressive left, activists, net rooters, people like that who pay attention to programs like this, they may be a small minority, but they make a lot of noise. My question to you is, should they be angry at President Obama, or should they be thrilled that they're lucky to live at a time we have a progressive president when most Americans hardly can remember a progressive president back to Roosevelt?
Well,
I'm serious. Who was the last progressive president?
Well, on some things, Bill Clinton was progressive. On others, he was moderate, and on others, he could be conservative. So, you know, I kind of eschew labels.
But he wasn't. He was a moderate. He was a moderate Democrat. Let's face it, and that's why he was successful.
Sure.
But with this president, I think is a progressive. So why are the progressives mad at him?
I don't know. I think they expected too much too early. And obviously this president is trying to deliver on a number of key initiatives. And obviously governing is tougher sometimes than campaigning. But what's happening in Kentucky is we're surging because, we're putting Kentucky first, and we're talking about issues that are important to Kentuckians. And the rationale for Rand Paul's candidacy is falling apart. He's talked about term limits, but he won't apply them to himself. He has talked about, I've taken a whole lot of hits from Karl Rove's American Crossroads and all these special interest groups on healthcare.
I know he's after you.
He's after me, and I hope some of your viewers will go to ConwayFightFund.com and help us out. But we've learned here recently that Rand Paul is now calling for a $2,000 deductible for every recipient of Medicare. He's not going to win this health care argument by putting forward positions like that. So the rationale for his candidacy is beginning to collapse.
Do you think Karl Rove is a negative influence on American life?
I do. I do. As someone who's taking about $1 million worth of special interest money that is coming, 91% of it coming, I think, from 3 billionaires and coming in and running ads in the Commonwealth of Kentucky claiming that I have cut $500 billion from Medicare.
I got a tough one for you. I got a tough one for you, and I don't know where you're going to stand on this. We got reports. I got reports over the weekend that that your senior senator, Mitch McConnell, has been personally holding up, issuing subpoenas to the oil company, BP in particular, for its role in the BP disaster. Mitch McConnell does not believe in a serious investigation of BP. Is he in the tank with BP? I can't think of another reason why he doesn't want a serious investigation of an environmental catastrophe. Your thoughts?
I can't think of another reason either. I mean, I believe in accountability, and I am an opponent.
Is he in the tank with the oil industry? Is he in the tank with the oil industry?
Well, it seems like he is, because I tell you what, Chris, it seems like he's fighting, and he's trying to push this on past the elections and not allow Bob Graham and his committee, which has to report in July, not allowing them to have subpoena power. They ought to have subpoena power to get at the bottom of what happened and make certain it never happens again.
Well, that's one good reason for you to get elected right there. Thank you, Jack Conway. We need attorney generals who go after the bad guys and know the importance of a subpoena and putting people in the box and under oath so they can't squirm away from it again. I'm serious.